how did I end up here? How did I allow myself to get inside this situation where I can't even put gas in a car so I can get back and forth to work? And that was tough. And that's really when I know that I got to rock bottom.
Daddy, can I play the music now? But this we go.
You know that I got love for my kinfolk, my blood. Through the thick and thin, we hit no matter what.
This is me and Daddy here, and Jenny also. And we're here to teach you something. Founded by So Your Grind. And goes a little something like this. Take it over, Daddy.
Welcome to Family Abide, So Your Grind. This is a podcast series highlighting lessons learned by the hard knocks and by grace. My name is Robert E. Mesker Jr. and my co-host is Divine Lee, aka G. Lee. Our podcast intersects between the culture, faith, family, and finance. Episode 12, Resilient Than a Mug, from 324 till now. Today's guest, Anthony Weaver from About That Wallet podcast, walks us through his journey from hitting rock bottom with a 324 out of 850 credit score, and how he used this as motivation to create a platform to help people build strong financial habits through education and resources to get people back to zero and even the playing field. Hello, how's everyone doing? We are here with Anthony Weaver, host of About That Wallet podcast, and just a good all-around guy. Can you tell us a little bit about the man behind About That Wallet and where you're from and what do you do?
All right. So I am the host of the About That Wallet podcast. My name is Anthony Weaver, where we help you build strong financial habits. And the cool thing I like about doing the show, and I guess you could say just a little bit about me, is that, you know, just growing up in Baltimore, just learning a lot of the things that wasn't taught to me. I didn't find out a lot of this stuff until I was in college. Far as dealing with finances, understanding the importance of seed money, how to actually pay my bills on time. Like, what does that look like? Because, you know, growing up, it was a family of five in the house. Well, family of, 5 people in the household on average, but then sometimes it'll be 7 people in the household on the weekends, with my mom working about 2 to 3 jobs, and then my stepfather working about 2 jobs on his own and trying to start a business, a limousine business and everything like that. So it was tough. And just kind of going through that, seeing how they actually operate around money, was one of those things that was like, hey, I don't want to start my own business.
Yeah.
That actually takes away from the household. And then 2, it was like understanding, hey, the adults only know so much. And one of the things that I did was, I noticed that my stepfather, he always tried to act like, well, he always said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. And I kept trying to figure out what the heck he was talking about, because it seemed like he kept going all in on starting a business, but it never got anywhere. And so it was one of those things like, why are you doing this to the detriment of the family? And then I started thinking about, okay, well, if he's reading a book, I don't think he actually went to college, but he was reading a GED book. And I was reading, and I was like, well, what the heck is GED? And this was in middle school. And so I was just reading it, and I was like, oh, this is the same stuff that we learn in the school right now. So if I'm learning what he is learning and trying to get a GED for something, I guess it was to help him make some more education, some more money at his job. I think that's what he was saying. But if he's just reading a book to get ahead, then why don't I start reading more books when I was younger? So that's what got me to understand the whole concept of, hey, all the secrets in life are in books, to help us go a little further into where we really want to be. So that is kind of like the early on phases on what got me to understand like society, the world that's around me.
So you kind of hit on a couple points where you were talking about how, you know, you kind of started off in an environment where you didn't know a lot about money initially. When you started About That Wallet podcast, was it more to keep you accountable on your journey, or was it more about helping others in their journey?
It was more about helping others in their journey. Because you always hear about going from A to Z, which is, hey, follow me if you want to make $1 million, or hey, this is how you make $10,000 a day. One of those things is that a lot of people don't even know how to make the first or even save $100.
Mm-hmm.
My goal was to teach people how to get to their first $1,000. And because I was able to come away from being, as you could say, completely broke on my own, just leaving a long-term relationship and canceling a lot of the credit cards, getting into debt, had collectors calling me all the time. And ultimately during that process, my credit score dropped down to 324. And because of that, I was able to, as you could say, climb out of the debt or the hole that I dig myself into. And now I'm teaching people who are in that valley to come back up to just ground level. You know, ground level is zero, which is when you're born. And it's almost like that race back to zero. And that's ultimately what got me started into this podcast, because of the habits that I formulated, and also the mindset that I had to put myself into to understand, like, hey, I don't have to go out and do all the cool stuff with everybody every weekend. I really need to sit down and focus on myself for these like 3 months and just really hash out everything.
When you were going down that financial spiral or spin, what did you do, or when did you know that you really hit rock bottom?
What happened when I hit rock bottom was when I realized that I could not afford to pay for gas in my car. I had credit cards that were either maxed out. And because the credit cards were maxed out, the credit card companies decided to lower my available credit, which then made me over, which then made me have to pay more each month. And then I just felt bad, you know, like, how did I end up here? How did I allow myself to get inside this situation where I can't even put gas in a car so I can get back and forth to work? And that was tough. And that's really when I know that I got to rock bottom.
And then what was your first step for other people who are in that situation or might be going through that situation? What was your first step to kind of, you know, aligning yourself in the path that you need to go to, and readjusting your GPS mentally to you know, find a new path?
Well, the first step that I did was to take advantage of the weekends. Usually Fridays are the day where I just do my laundry and clean up around the house. But that particular Friday, I took a moment and got a calendar, just a basic calendar, and started writing down on that Friday, on that, I think it was the beginning of the month. If it wasn't beginning, it was either the middle of the month. It was the first 2 weeks of the month, before I even got paid. And I just wrote down when the bills are coming out. So I pulled up all my statements, looked at the calendar. All right, cool. This is coming out this time. This statement says the bills are due on this date. When is my rent due? Because, you know, I had a new rent and everything. When is the car payments coming out? No, I didn't have car payments. When is the car insurance due? When is everything done? So having that calendar and visually, because I'm a visual person, so I had everything written down in front of me. That was the first thing I did. And it's usually people try to say, well, write down a budget. No, you need to actually take a snapshot of where you're at. And that was the most important thing that I did. And that was the first thing I did, was to take a snapshot of where I'm at.
And when this happened, were you still in school, or were you already working in your field?
I had finished my master's degree. And I was working in my field, but not really where I wanted to be at that time.
Do you feel that it's harder when you have more education? So, for example, you said you had a master's. Obviously, that means you went through college and had other training. Do you feel like it's harder to ask for that assistance or to find that assistance? Because people say, well, you got to this point, how come you don't understand money now?
Assistance, no, the education piece did help out with with marketing. When you think about it from a contractor or in the private sector, most of the time with the private sector, you're actually reaching out to public sectors, which is like the government, your local state government, and so forth. So for the private industries, having certifications, having education, having that extra sheet of paper helps them market their business. So it was easier for me to find ways to increase my income. But during that time frame, when I was down, I actually had to become a waiter. I became a waiter at what's it called, like a Ruby Tuesdays? Yeah. So I was at Ruby Tuesdays. I became a waiter because I knew the manager at the prior Ruby Tuesdays, because I used to go all the time during my happy hours when I was making a little bit of cash. I was thinking I was making some money. But ultimately I was just spending money I didn't have. But because I was there so frequently, built up the rapport. So by the time when they moved on and I was looking for a job, I was able to just go to them and say, hey, can I work here part-time, just to bring in some extra income? They was like, sure, just fill out this application. And then I became a waiter. And that's why I was waiting tables at the meantime while working another job. So that was one of the other things, because I figured out where I was at. I noticed that I was missing out the income piece. So I needed some more money. And that's where I came up with the idea to just start to get a second job.
Well, I guess what I wanted to say is, sometimes when people get to a certain level in life, it might be like a certain level of shame associated. Well, my finances are not together. Maybe it's like, oh, well, you went to school, you have education, but that education may not have been in finances. A lot of that is coming from your household and how you were brought up. How did you manage to overcome that shame and even start a podcast talking about finances when you were in your own financial straits?
Yeah, I didn't start the podcast until after I got out. Just to be clear. One of the things is that it depends on your circle. My circle wasn't the one of a shame. They were more so of like, hey, you in this rut? Cool. Let us know how we can help. And then I tell them like, hey, at the time, because I was on my own, I was like, well, hey, I would like to have a housewarming party, but I don't have any furniture. So you guys got to bring your own chairs. And that's what I said BYOC. Like everybody said BYOB, I said BYOC. And everybody came over. They were very supportive. I had somebody even donated a fold-out table. So I had a fold-out table, got some stuff from the dollar store, make it look nice, presentable. And all I had was just one fold-out chair, actually. And I had a pallet table that I created. And so it was just the community coming together. It wasn't so much so like, oh, because you're going through this, oh, why are you going through this? And you should be able to do this. No, it's more so of, hey, you in a rut. Let's hands down, everybody. Let's kind of put together and let's how we can support each other. And I hate to ask for money, so I always did things that didn't require money. If somebody's throwing a party, hey, I'll come over. I might be able to give you a card or something like that, or I might re-gift something that somebody had given me that I know I'm not going to use. So that's kind of the conversations we had.
It seems like you had a good circle that was supportive in your journey. And I think a lot of times, whether it be with your friends or social media friends, you feel like you have to keep up with the Joneses, and sometimes that is difficult. Was that just an organic relationship that the tribe that you kind of ended up being with understood that, or did they have their own money struggles? Or
We all had our own money struggles. It was just at different areas in life. Mine, I actually hid mine a lot. I didn't talk about, where I was at financially. They just knew that if something was happening, I was there. Usually I don't bring anything. They didn't ask questions or anything like that. Or I'll pay my own way or something like that. So it was just straightforward. I mean, I didn't ask for anything.
Let's go back a little bit. Do you, since now looking back, you've been in a position where you've interviewed a lot of people, you've been in a position where you've had certain struggles. What are like a couple of things, 2 or 3 things that you would have told yourself, or 2 or 3 points in your maturation process that would have helped change you a little bit quicker to get you where you wanted to get?
The first thing I would say, and this is I tell a lot of young people now, is to never move in with somebody that you like, that you just met. Do not move. Only time you move in with somebody is if you plan to marry within the next 3 months. So even if you're engaged, don't move in until those 3 months right before you're ready to get married. And that's the number one thing that would have changed my whole financial trajectory.
A lot of times, that's interesting you brought that up. A lot of times people move in together out of convenience, more so than, hey, we want to build a life together. It's like, well, we can go have.
Right. It sounds nice financially. But one of the things that people forget is that feelings go into that. And then when you're moving out, then you stressing out everybody else. Then you ripping away from that situation. And I can, it's a whole nother podcast on trying to like moving out from somebody you moved in with. How to bounce back from the finances. I mean, that's what I had to do. That's what we're talking about now, is how I was able to bounce back from that financial, as you could say, situation that I put myself into.
So that's definitely one of them. Do you feel like your financial situation would have been different with additional education, like earlier in high school or college? Or do you feel like, some of the struggles that you went through were just necessary to get you where you needed to be now?
The only reason why I pause on that one is because it's almost like cliche to say, hindsight is 20/20.
Absolutely.
If you could go back and do something and change it, yeah, that's fine. But would I've started a podcast if my finances were well? Probably not, because I would have been fine and everything would have been peachy. But we hear now, based on the choices that we created today. I mean, ultimately, a man is a sum of their choices, and sometimes you'll hear the sum of their habits. But we are creatures of habit. Most time you'll hear, but ultimately, we need to focus on what it is that we really want out of life. And what got me into that situation is not so much the education piece. I kind of wish I had more of a relationship mentor than a financial mentor, because at the time when money is still okay, you're in college, money isn't really the forefront of your psyche. The main thing is either are you able to get out of these classes and actually pass your classes? And that's one of the things that is very important to understand before you even do anything about money, because money will come, but the relationships are one of those things that kind of dictate and actually guide you onto how much money you can make, how you're going to spend that money, and also how you're going to make that money. Think about it. The President Bush, his father was president. There was no question there wasn't no, oh no, how your son going to be president too? No, it was like, hey, he was president. The son decided to follow the same footsteps. Mm-hmm. So say if your daughter all of a sudden decided to do her own podcast, there was no question that she just followed daddy's footsteps. You already laid the groundwork. They already see how it impacts the family. They see in the progress that you've already made. So when it comes to the relationship, they already see the relationship and the things that you built already. So it's a lot easier. It's familiar. The relationships, how you deal with the situations at hand, guide you through life in the way how you actually interact with each other, with money, with people you love, people you hate. How do you determine on things that you hate? You know, what are those things that get you to where you are today? So I'll say that a mentor would have been great for me to have in college about relationships more so than the financial side of the house.
That's interesting that you say that. I think one of the biggest things even for me is that I didn't even value mentorship when I was in college and when I was younger. So it's hard to say, you know, I think looking back to me, like the power of mentorship, that currency is probably in that relationship currency is probably some of the strongest thing that you can have, even more than education, more than money, because sometimes education can go, money can go. But if you have that ability to kind of build genuine relationships with people, that will take you a long way.
Yeah, because business is based off a relationship. Mm-hmm. Think about it. Like Issa Rae, she was talking about back in '96. She got the first time to actually write a script for some TV show. I cannot remember what sitcom that was. But then also later in '96, she actually used the blueprint that she was able to conjugate up from that particular sitcom that they used. And she already had the blueprint. She actually used it in her church and had a bunch of kids act out the scene. Because of that one small relationship, which grew into so many things. And now she's like a seeked out director and also created her own stuff based on the blueprint that was already put out there. So it goes back to the relationships, who you know, and how you're actually going to utilize the people around you. Not to utilize them in the sense like you utilize money, but in the sense of a sharing of exchanges of information and a sharing of exchanges of experiences to kind of help each other out.
So I know you kind of said something about, you know, without the experiences that you had about that wallet wouldn't happen. On your website, you said something. I wasn't quite sure. So I want to get a better understanding. You said, I started this podcast to share knowledge that will not pass down to my personal generation. Can you explain that a little bit further?
Yeah, because I'm not having kids. And that's one of the things that me and my wife decided before we actually got engaged. And this was something that we decided while we were dating. And so it's not a new topic. And one of those things is that this is something I want to share to the world. This is something that I want to actually give to the young people that are listening. And actually just kind of share my experience and just put my voice out there. And that's the whole reason why I started this podcast.
Wow. In sharing that information, I guess I wanted to say, you talk about a little bit about how, you know, you came from a situation where your needs were met, but they were definitely challenging situations growing up. How easy or how receptive, should I say, is it to talk to your own family members now that you've come out or you've, you know, been through some of these situations and being able to learn some of these things? How receptive are they? It's always different with family. How's that?
It's cool. The only thing about it is with my mom, honestly, and like my dad, it's just like, because my dad's now is homeless, so he does catch up and watch the shows from time to time. When my siblings have them over and they are able to watch like TV or something like that on YouTube. But for my mom, it's more so still that diaper syndrome. It's like, how did you find out about this? Like, like you're a kid. Like, where did you find this at? How did you find out about this person? When did you find out about that? And I was like, the IRS.gov website. like everybody else. But, or pick up a book and read the book. And so those are the things that's been helpful. My siblings, on the other hand, some of this stuff I've been talking about for a long time, but obviously, you have that sibling mentality. It's like, why should I listen to you? And then when somebody else says it and it was like, oh, it's golden. I said this like 2 years ago, but okay. As long as you got it, that's all that matters. And then I throw reference points out there all the time. Like, yeah, I already talked about this. Here you go. Here's the links. And that's ultimately what I loved about having a podcast, is that I can point them to reference points when I talked about it. Had experts on the show to talk about these particular areas, from real estate to life insurance to vending machines to just so many different aspects and different areas on just how to make money, how to utilize your money, and then also how to just secure your finances.
Yeah. You've managed to be extremely consistent with all your shows, being very persistent, regardless of what life has thrown you, whatever adversity has come your way. What drives you in the face of adversity? How are you able to maintain that consistency day in and day out to bring the world information on About That Wallet?
To be honest with you, I mean, I've been honest with you this whole time, but the thing about it is that there are times where I really do want to quit. I just want to say, I did enough shows. I just want to release all of my pre-recordings and just call it a day. However, listening to new followers and new people who are just getting wind of the show saying, I really love your show. It's really helped with the conversations at home. I was able to provide a authorized user for my daughter to help build up their credit. Or I was able to create a custodial account for my son. And I have a couple of my friends, they just started being fathers and mothers. And they was like, thank you so much for teaching me about this, or having this person on the show, learning about life insurance, learning about how to protect my child's credit. These are the things that really keep me going. And it's also, I just love the part of editing and learning how everybody market things differently. So that's one of the things that I love to dabble into. But as far as the topics wise, it's never ending. Most of them are evergreen, especially when it comes to finances. So
yeah,
the stuff's been talked about. And if you don't mind me doing a small plug for a book, it's not my book, but there's one little book called Common Sense by Art Williams. And I love this book only because how thin it is, but also it gets straight to the common things about finances. And it just talks about how to get started, pay yourself first, the money stuff. Yeah. And it is one of the books I do highly recommend to a lot of people as a reference for anything that they go through. Because once you read that book, every book that you read about personal finance will have those concepts in there.
As well, people might not know, but I met you at FinCon. Actually, one of the very first people I met at FinCon, along with our friend there, Stacks. But you have a really genuine personality and able to connect with a lot of individuals, and you just relate with them well. Throughout your shows, you've interviewed a lot of people. What are 2 to 3 most significant things or items that you learned about finances or life while hosting this show?
Because I'm coming up on my 100th interview, so far as like a person, and I will have to say that the top 3 things, the common things. The first one is that your story is not unique. That's the very first one that I have to say that is common. The second one is that you need help. And because we all didn't make it here by ourselves, we all needed help in some areas in our lives, whether it's somebody to listen to us, somebody to really pull us up and actually allow us to grow or invest in us. And then, just so many different things on the way how another person can help from a relationship aspect. Back to what we were talking about earlier, which is just a relationship, those mentoring things. And lastly, so the third thing, as far as common, I will have to say that the community is another big thing. Those will be the three biggest things that I'll say across community. And what I mean by community, I'm meaning like finding people that are like-minded and actually achieving the same goals that you are, but they might have a different approach to it. That doesn't mean you have to copy them, but it's just like, okay, how are they utilizing the information? And even if you do copy them, you're going to have your own spin on it, regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Earlier you said something about you and your wife having conversations, making tough choices about just what direction your life wants to go. How do you guys have conversations about money, about personal finance, about what you guys want to accomplish and what are important?
We don't, to be honest. In the beginning, because all our conversations happen in the beginning, which is building that foundation. The first thing that we set up were our boundaries. What are the things that that could actually hurt this relationship and ultimately cause some rift in our marriage, or however, if you want to call it the bond that we're trying to create. And one of those things in our big boundary is that you can do whatever you want to do with your finances, just as long as it doesn't impact the other person's finances. Meaning, say if I'm trying to go all in with this business, right? But then I can't even pay my basic bills, which is my cell phone or the car note or something like that. That's going to be a problem. So the thing is to find things within your means and keeping those boundaries together. And then ultimately, I can just tell you how we set up everything, which is we don't combine finances.
Yeah, that's a lot of people talk about, hey, throw all of it. I'll be honest, me and my wife have been trying to combine our finances for a long time. We are still not there. We have a joint account where we put some money together for joint expenses, but we don't just throw everything together, and we haven't done that yet. It's something that we're actively talking about, but it's interesting to see what people do.
Yeah, it's to each their own, because I'm not sure if you watch Dave Ramsey a lot, but there was one clip with his daughter, Rachel, and somebody had emailed in saying that their husband is afraid to spend money because they're $20,000 in debt, to the point where the husband would not give anything additional. They got a child. They just moved into a house, and that she's just trying to get some soup. And her husband was like, no. Yeah.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's crazy that, the way how Dave Ramsey stuff is set up is that it's almost like a one-stop shop solution when it's not. And that's one of the things I love about finances, that personal finances is personal. So if you guys, and he does preach a lot about, keeping everybody should have their all finances together. Everybody's check to go into one thing. It just doesn't work for everybody. And for me and my wife, we have everything completely separate. If there's a bill, a joint bill, we'll sit down at the table and just split it 50-50. And either she'll pay for it, I'll just cash app her the difference, or I'll Zelle it to her or something like that. It doesn't matter. It's the whole beauty of trust. Hey, I know you're going to pay the bill. Light's still on, right? So that's all you can ask.
Did y'all, you bring up some important points, because I'm sure, since you talk about finances. Sometimes people are wondering, or they might come to you with questions about finance. So how do y'all do it? And it's interesting because the way you do it might not be the way they should do it. How do you answer those questions?
Well, I start off with their goals. What do they ultimately want to do? And then I'll say, set up your boundaries. Because like I said, if it starts impeding with the next person, then that's a problem. And then I ask them, well, how are you doing it now? What are your thoughts on it? Because most of the time when people come to you and ask you about something, they already had thought about it before. So try to get their thoughts, see where they're at mentally, and then just take it from there. I try not to tell somebody on how to use their money directly without looking at their overall picture.
So I'm just going to ask one question because I have some challenges with this. So I'm gonna have the wife on a little bit later, and I just want to get your perspective. It's different because obviously everybody comes from their own different background, financially or culturally or just relationally. But sometimes your finances don't align well, or not that they don't even align well. It's just that you have two different views of what something should be. And I think what happens in a marriage, sometimes it gets very hard to reconcile those two different viewpoints, because it's not necessarily that one person's wrong or the other person is right. It's just what you're accustomed to.
Yep.
So, for us, we had a situation where, we're just trying to figure out how much to spend on for Christmas on the kids and how much is appropriate. And it wasn't that she was right or that I was wrong. It was just that we just saw it differently. Well, how much, she comes from a family of big givers, and maybe our family didn't give as much. It was more like time based. How do you deal with those, or do you come across those type of difficulties when navigating your own relationship financially?
Since we're talking about the holidays, that's funny. Because I gotta say, it's one of the things that me personally, my mom, my family, like my mom really tried her best to give us everything. Because when she was growing up, she had to share a lot of stuff. So it's just one of those things like she's trying to do the opposite of what her parents provided her. Me personally, I'm like, I saw that and I saw my mom struggle with that. So I personally don't want a lot of things. I'm okay with time and everything like that. So I don't need the whole, tree set up and everything like that. I'm lazy. So, and I told my wife, like, yeah, I want to get a small Christmas tree like the ones you get from the dollar store. That's all I want. And she was like, well, that's not a tree. And I was like, it is a tree. So she was like, if you're going to get a tree, you got to get an 8-foot tree. And I was like, why 8 foot? Because I want to get on tippy toes. I was like, well, then we ain't get a tree. All we had was stockings this time. We just had a stocking with my initial on it, a stocking with her initial on it, and we had presents underneath. No tree at all. I didn't get my Dollar Tree tree. And she didn't get her 8-foot tree. So it was fine. But everybody you're really there for the gifts. I mean, it really depends on the values. And that's one of the things that we just come to agreement. It was like, hey, if it isn't going to work for both of us, we just ain't going to get it together. So.
Okay. All right. A few more questions. This has been good. I just you talked about Ramsey. You were talking about her daughter a little bit. She had a 4-category system, and I just really like it because it helps us understand who you are. So when you were growing up, just kind of get an understanding of money classroom. Did your parents talk to you about money? Yes or no?
They talked about it. Yes.
Okay. And then how were those conversations? Did they tend to be more calm, or they were a little bit more stressed?
They were calm conversations on the things that they did talk about.
Okay.
And because the question is so vague, it's almost like if they talked about it one time.
Well, no,
technically they talked about it. Just based on the question.
Yeah, correct. All right. That's a good point. So did your parents have an ongoing conversation
There you go.
talking to you about money principles and concepts?
They did not. Yeah, because they had a it's one of those conversations, those cliche conversations that you hear on TV, like, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket, or hide money, like, which means that if it's a slight, like a piece of paper, then you hide the money, you hide a dollar bill in notebooks, or you hide it underneath books, or underneath clothes, or in between. You know what I'm saying? You get one of those types of conversations. It wasn't more so of like, hey, you should be investing this time. Let's go to the bank to invest your money. It was more so, let's go to the bank and open up this bank account. Okay, now we're done. It wasn't like, I learned most of the banking stuff in school, because school in elementary, they actually the bank was local, it's a credit union. They came over to the school and was like, hey, you can go to any bank you want to and ask about rates. And I was like, well, what are rates? And they gave us a sheet of their current rates for that particular term. And for the kids that are listening, you can actually go to the bank and actually ask them, hey, what are your rates for your checking accounts? And then usually they'll tell you go online nowadays, but they used to have them printed out when you first walk in. So that's a tip for you guys. If you have kids, for those of you who have kids that are listening, just take them to the bank, or actually go to the bank website, and they usually have their rates printed right then and there. So you can actually say, hey, if you have less than $10,000 in this account, your interest rate, and that's what they're showing you, the interest rates are 0.02% or something like that. But if you have a high yield savings rates and everything like that, you need to know the rates before you get into it. So this is going back to knowing the rules before you play the game. So yeah, it would have been lovely to have that type of deep dive conversation, but no, short answer.
Okay. Two things I want to get into. So normally we have a financial word of the day. We're going to go over that, and then we're going to have a your verse, your lesson. And it could be from anywhere. It could be from the culture, could be something spiritual, could be a line from a song or a movie, but something that kind of helped shape your understanding, or just shape you as a person, or about money, that I could share eventually with my kids.
Okay. So one of the things that was significant to me that I found that was very important, one of the things that got me into starting this whole podcast in the first place was reading a book. The first book that got me into start having more open conversations around finances was The Color of Money. And The Color of Money was talking about the redlining and how the banks were actually not giving to certain neighborhoods because Black people were invading those spaces. That was actually coming from the federal government saying that. And to understand, okay, there's a lot of history around the finances in equity and financial equity within the Black and brown community. Because of that, that situation, that is one of the things that caused me to start having more conversations about people who are already own their homes. What are the covenants that were set up when you're buying your home? What were the interest rates? What were the situation like? And then because I was also working at the government side, and we helped out with the adjudication process, which means that we have to vet you before you become viable to work in the government. And I was able to see some of the covenants on people's deeds. And because that person did not go through the process to remove the covenant from their deed, I had to send them. I didn't personally, but I actually saw that some of those reports actually get sent over to what they call it, the Office of Employment. I think they call it as OE or something like that, where they actually have to go through and have that conversation about them and see what they plan on doing, because it was an ethic violation at that time frame, to see what they can do about that. But to have those discussions about how wealth is actually distributed, that's one of the books that really opened up my eyes to that. And then the other thing I would say, far as the things that will be beneficial to understand across the board, is because I'm an educator at heart. And one of the things is that we need to understand, how do we learn? What are those main things that we need to do to educate ourselves? And that's one of the most important things before we move on to whatever we want to do. Because the faster way that you can actually understand the situation or the information is the faster way that you can go ahead on and progress in life and where you want to be.
So that was good. I can tell you don't have any kids yet.
Oh, I don't plan on having any kids. So.
No, I'm messing with you just because sometimes, basically it's about breaking the words down. So if I were to say the quote or the message that you would have is how we learn, or to ask them, how do we learn things, so that I could kind of pass it down to make it more digestible? Or would you say something else? Like, more so into a quote or it can be anything, but more so to something, because sometimes it's hard to explain big concepts. So if you just had a nugget or something that, hey, this is something that really,
well, then I have to pick something else, because how we learn is it's a little different, because each child's a little different. And being a teacher, it was one of the things that get kids to do more was to actually ask them why questions, or how. Like, how did you do that on your own? Like, what did you do to fix that? Can you tell me how to do X, Y, and Z, even though you know how to do it? But having that child actually sit there and explain it to you, it's kind of one of the best lessons that you can ever give a child, is to give them the authority to make them feel like not make them feel like, but actually give them the ability to explain themselves. Is one of the most powerful things you could ever do for a child. But to give a child something, I would say, is a habit. One of the things I really love is the habit. It's called The Habit Loop by Charles Duhigg. He didn't coin the term, but that's where I got it from. So I'm gonna give him his credit. And the first thing is that to understand what it is that is your trigger. What triggers you to do anything? Next thing you know, you need to start thinking about the routine. What are the things that you're doing because you heard that trigger, saw the trigger, or something, felt the trigger, caused you to start doing that routine? Then the last thing is understanding your reward. What are the things that you're actually looking for? So, perfect example, we can use toothpaste for the kids. Yeah. So your teeth feel gritty. You put your lips on it, feel really gritty. Okay, that's your cue, right? Your routine is to go upstairs, brush your teeth, but they didn't say how long. So your routine usually it's almost like a SMART goal, where it's actually something attainable and everything like that. So you go upstairs, you brush your teeth for 2 minutes with minty toothpaste, so you can feel minty. And then that's your reward. Your reward is that now you got minty breath and everything like that, and your teeth are smooth. But that's the cool thing. But in marketing, that's the reason why I love this loop thing, because the marketing side of the house, they always talk about the routine side. Like, hey, you want that fresh breath, you want that smooth teeth, but use our product for your routine. And that's how they get you every time. So every time you look at a commercial, I'm going to just change the way you listen to commercials now. You're going to start listening to the cue. What is the cue that they getting on? All right, what is the routine? Obviously, it's to use their product. What is the reward that they're trying to show you? And that's the end goal. But also, you can think about that as a business. I know I'm going on here, but I really love this part. We always like to eat, right?
Yeah.
Our reward is to feel fulfilled and that we got energy and we feel good. That's our reward. Our cue is that our stomach is rumbling, it's hurting, I feel fatigued, so forth.
Mm-hmm.
The product that I want to create, or I hope somebody creates this, I think it's already in the works, is a food patch. You know, they got the nicotine patches where
Mm-hmm.
same exact thing. So the nicotine patch, you put those on. Hey, I got my nicotine for the day. I feel my nicotine high or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I want that to be a food patch so that, hey, I feel hungry, slap on a couple patches right quick and get my nourishment and everything like that until I can actually go and get a full meal or something like that. So that is ultimately what I want to create. That's going to be my next venture. I know I'm rambling on, but understanding how the habit loop works is the most important thing in life that I'll have to say that I would like to leave
It's called To Habit or just a habit loop?
a habit loop.
Oh, the habit loop. Okay. All right. And then the financial word of the day brought to us from Sense to Sense is taxes. And it's the definition for taxes for them is money that a government requires a person to pay to support their government. What did you know about taxes growing up? And what does that word mean to you now?
Taxes growing up, to me, when I was growing up, was that the government always want their money. Now that I'm older, taxes is just a rule of the game that is modified every year. And that I'm understanding that there are a lot of lobbyists, billions of dollars spent to change the tax code to keep them confusing for the everyday consumer. And understanding that the taxes and the reason why we have to file taxes in the United States is only because that's what they require. The IRS already knows how much we owe them. They know how much they're supposed to pay us. It's just that it's up to us to figure it out. In other countries, you just get a letter to say, hey, these are your taxes. This is how much you paid. That's it.
How do you feel about those two different systems?
It's I don't feel any kind of way about it. I think it's it's something that we all voted for as citizens of the United States. This is what we live in. Other countries, hey, that's what they voted for. That's what they voted for. So, I mean, I feel that it's the onus is back to the citizens to actually take on that education piece, to actually really learn the information, or just continue to pay other people that know the knowledge and take it and find some ways to get us paid.
Yeah. Do you feel like growing up, because there's taxes on everything. There's taxes from gum to taxes at the end of the year. Did you see those taxes similarly, or did you just see it like all of the same or kind of different?
Growing up or now?
Let's go with growing up first.
Okay, growing up, I had no clue about taxes. That's to be honest with you. I just knew that somebody at the end of the year, everybody's talking about their tax returns. And that was it. But also growing up as a citizen is that as I'm starting to understand money more, is that the tax return means that you were supposed to get paid more throughout the year on your paycheck than what they actually giving back to you. Because ultimately they could be like, well, this is what you think you should have got on your paycheck. And now you're trying to figure out how much they owe you. But actually, now that I'm older, I actually pay taxes because I'm like, I want all my money up front. And then I can figure out if I want to do with it. And I can actually either invest with the extra money and then, trade it in later. So these are different options. Once you learn more, you can do more.
All right. Thank you, Anthony, for your time, with us today, just going over some of these topics and giving us the opportunity to have a conversation with you. Can you just give everybody where they can find you online and on your social?
Yep. You can find me at About That Wallet on all social media platforms. Most active on Instagram and on YouTube. Thanks for having me on.
Bye-bye. Bye, fans. Thanks for all the time. On Family Abide, so you're going with Daddy, Jordy, and Devon. And Mommy.
Okay.
And Mommy.
Who's got my back?
I got Chopper.
Who's got my back?
Who got that swag?
Who got that swag?
I got that swag. Look it up.
Okay.
Through the joy and pain, you gotta keep searching. Living life, no regrets. Ain't no shoulda, woulda, coulda, had an altar. Still been a minute since I've been up at the altar.
Thank you for listening to Family Abide. Make sure to subscribe in order to catch future episodes. Family Abide is available on all your favorite podcast outlets. Remember, life is not just about family. It's not just about wealth. It's about building people and communities that endure without yielding. Always choose your abundance beyond insecurities, debts, and entanglements. The next generation is depending on it. Remember your purpose. Sow your grind and watch it grow. Thank you for joining us on Family Abide.
So you're crying.
Everybody need love. Everybody need love. I'm tired of my problems. I'm tired of the drama. I'm tired of the pressure from my mama and my papa. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of the rain. I'm tired of the hurting. I'm tired of the working. I'm tired of the struggling. I'm tired of the hustling. I'm so sick and tired of having nothing.
Jam, you got something to say?
But after that, I'll turn when
Yeah, I think it's good developing daddy-daughter relationships.